Good evening, I'm Mike Gousha, and this is Sunday Night.
He's been a mainstay of Milwaukee radio for 40 years, almost unheard of in a business where change is a constant. But soon, this December in fact, WKTI's Bob Reitman will retire.
I thought a lot about it, and when you actually say it, then you have a feeling, you know, and I feel very confident that I've made the right choice.
A cancer survivor, he says he feels good, feels no pressure to leave, and the ratings are still solid. But at 64, Reitman is ready to say goodbye to those early morning revelries and spend more time enjoying his family and enjoying music, the reason he got into the radio business in the first place. Tonight, Reitman on radio and retirement. He joins us next on Sunday Night.
And welcome again to Sunday Night. I'm Mike Gousha, and our guest tonight is the, you know, I don't want to use the word legend. I did that last week with Val Phillips, and she said, you know what legend means? Old. O-L-D. So I'm not using that. Radio icon. How do you like that?
How about being in the same place for a long time, guy?
That's nice, simple terms.
Yeah.
This, believe it or not, is the final Sunday night show with a live guest in the studio.
Wow.
And I thought, what would be better than having a couple of guys who are soon to be retired sitting around? Man, that's going to be thrilling to the audience.
When this is over, we're out of here.
I know, we've got important visitors.
I'm honored. Thanks, Mike.
It's great to have you here. Do you think you're going to be good at retirement? It's coming up in December. You have a little time yet.
Yeah, I do. I think so. I'm looking forward to it, but I've never done it before. I really have worked almost all my life, so I'm looking forward to it. It's an unknown quantity, but you know, you have to. This resonates with you.
Sure.
You know, you're going to do it too.
I'm going to be a working stiff for a while, and I know you're going to continue to dabble in things.
I have been asked by so many people. I feel like a senior in high school. Where are you going to college? What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you retire? And I have a feeling that some stuff's going to pop up, and that might be naive, but I think some things are going to pop up. But I know for sure I'm going to do a 1 hour, hopefully a 1 hour radio show, just playing music like I did when I came in.
And you go back to the roots, really, for you.
Yeah, because that's the only reason I ever got into this business, was to play whatever I wanted to play, and it's not quite that way now. It's changed a lot.
Do you get inspiration from guys like, and we were talking before the show began, there are a lot of interesting shows being done right now. Little Stevie Van Zandt has played with Springsteen, and Dylan, you were talking about, has his own show. Alice Cooper has his own show. I mean, there are a lot of people doing a show where they go back to the days, as you referred to, as the benevolent dictatorship. You go back where you play what you want to play.
You remember that term, benevolent dictatorship? Yeah. Well, that's what it was. I mean, we came in with our stack of records and played whatever we wanted to. So it was a benevolent dictatorship. And as it became more democratic, which is eventually what happened, the market dictated that this was more popular than that, and ultimately the ratings dictate what happens. But in non-commercial radio, that's not a factor. They don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. What would you like to play?
Center field. Maybe first base. No,
Me too.
Golf. I really want to play that, and that's never going to happen. But I'll keep trying at that. No, I want to play American music. I mean, all the way back to maybe the late 1800s, from Stephen Foster all the way up through the 20s and 30s and 40s. I mean, the deep roots.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And this is something that I've been discovering lately. Believe it or not, from Bob Dylan, who's got a 1 hour radio show, who has a 1 hour radio show on one of the satellite channels. I mean, the American life is really reflected in the music, and there's some great stuff, you know, going back to big band, Texas swing, everything. So kind of like that. Plus, I'm so steeped in the 50s and 60s music that, you know, I mean, the T-Bone Walker was Chuck Berry's biggest influence. So to listen to a T-Bone Walker song and hear the primal beginnings of a Chuck Berry riff, I mean, Chuck Berry was always it for me, but then you hear his influences. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
You met Chuck Berry, didn't you?
I sure did.
What kind of
guy? Meeting Chuck Berry was like meeting, I don't know, like, he is one of the 3 or 4 prime influences of modern rock and roll. He really had some tough times in terms of getting ripped off by record companies and promoters and so on, so he's guarded. But the experience was neat because he was playing at Summerfest And it was about a half hour before he went on, and he always has a local band waiting for him, because every local band that ever played should know Chuck Berry. And that was part of his contract. Half the money up front, the band waits for me. And it's about like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before he's supposed to go on, and all of a sudden this Ford Fairlane pulls up, and there's Chuck Berry driving it, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey kid, would you mind taking my guitar up to the stage?" So I carried Chuck Berry's guitar.
That's a nice memory.
Well, I mean, I still get goosebumps. I mean, yeah, he's so important.
An incredible time. I was talking, actually one of the favorite shows of the gentleman who produces this show, Gary Reistad, was a show we did back years ago with Carl Perkins.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one of the really the kings of that music of the mid-50s and the sort of whole Elvis generation. I remember talking to him about whether he would have been the Elvis. He was very blunt about it. He said, you know, I didn't look like Elvis.
Yeah.
And he said, I liked Elvis. He's a good man. I don't feel bitter about that. But I mean, what a time in our musical history.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis always thought that he should have been Elvis.
Yeah.
And he climbed over the wall with a gun at Graceland to make his point. He had probably had a few cocktails before he did that. But, you know, Elvis had, it's a convergence of everything.
Yeah.
And Presley was extremely good looking. Guys liked him as much as women did. He's sort of like George Clooney. There are certain people that we're all attracted to. And he had the moves, and he didn't write much of his own stuff. He was doing other people's stuff. Perkins was probably a much better, more deeply rooted performer. I mean, those guys came out of country music.
Right. I know.
And then when Elvis came on the television set, and that's the power of television.
Absolutely.
That was a huge turning point.
No question about it. We're talking with Bob Reitman. He is going to be retiring from...
I am? Oh, that's right.
Unless you have a change of heart.
No.
You never know. He'll be retired from WKTI later this year. We'll take a break and be right back on Sunday Night.
Every time you do, well, I feel right all over. Ooh, much.
We're back on Sunday Night. We're talking with Bob Reitman tonight, who will be retiring from WKTI Radio later this year after... How many years in radio? That'd be 40, wouldn't it?
About 40.
40.
Yeah.
And you said you... No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, how many years have you been doing this?
Television, 27 or 28.
Whoa.
And 25 here at the station.
Wow. And how many years doing this show?
17.
Tell me some of the more interesting...
Oh, boy, here we go.
No, I want to know... Carl Perkins, you thought he was great. Who else was you really... Somebody that really surprised and moved you?
Well, somebody who really surprised me was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You know, when I was a kid growing up in Milwaukee, Bucks came to town, new franchise in town, you get on board, they get the first pick in the draft, you get Lou Alcindor at the time. And so a lot of years passed. He came back to Milwaukee to have his number 33 retired by the Bucks. And we got a chance to interview him. And a lot of people had said, hey, you know, he's a little prickly, you might want to be careful in how you handle him and everything. Shows up 15, 20 minutes early. Oh, that's okay, I'll just sit up here and watch TV until you're ready to go. Comes out, most self-analytical, most unassuming, brutally frank about how he conducted himself as a young man in Milwaukee and how he views that today. I mean, to me, it was very surprising and really kind of fun to see somebody that comfortable with himself at that time.
I remember when he was living on the east side, I was living in the same area, and you'd see him come out of the building, and he was just so tall. And obviously, and and I thought he was only 4 feet tall. No, and I think in Milwaukee he kind of stood out, and he was uncomfortable with that. But he loved jazz, and he did a radio show.
Yeah, he loved Ron Cuzner, the jazz legend. I mean, the late legend. Yeah,
and my first program director.
Yeah, really.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Cuzner was my first one.
Go back, take me back to those days, Bob. I mean, you started, what, 66 or 67?
Yeah, we did a show called Sense Waves back in '66. It was just poetry, half-hour poetry show that had already been established. And the way that happened was, talk about serendipity. I was just doing poetry in coffee houses. And I had gone down to this coffee house to read poetry because I heard there was a poetry reading every Monday night. Well, there wasn't one this particular night, and I don't think I'm that aggressive a person, but I said to the coffee house owner, where's the poetry reading? And he said, oh, the guy shows up half the time. I said, well, let me do that. I'll organize it. So I organized it. We had UWM night and women's night and open mic night. And one night, this guy came up to me and said, would you like to do this show on WUWM? And he said, my friend's doing it, and he's leaving town. I said, well, why don't you do it? You write poetry. He said, oh, I could never do that. You do that. So I did. That's how I got into it. And then we asked if we could have the next 3 hours to play music, because nobody was playing the music that was coming out at that time. That's when, the Jefferson Airplane and Quicksilver and the Beatles and the Stones and Dylan, and nobody was playing that. Top 40 radio was only playing certain songs. So we had these albums. We had so many albums to play, and the old record distributors who used to service the radio stations would always say, well, here, you come on over and here's your stack. And there would be this, the Doors and all this stuff. And we got ratings on an educational radio, on WUWN. And that's because there were enough people out there that wanted to hear that kind of music. So it was all accidental.
You look at that time, and then you compare it to today. Have we come full circle? I mean, is satellite radio attempting to do what was done back then, where you can find those shows that have a certain stamp on them, the host stamp on them? Is that some of that happening today?
I guess so. I mean, you mentioned Miami Steve, and Dylan's doing a show, but back then there were thousands of FM stations that nothing was happening with them in this country. They were tax write-offs, they were playing elevator music. So our generation came into a world full of empty FM stations that were ready to be taken over, and now you can see what's happened. FM is very powerful. Now it's the internet and it's satellite, but if you have one of those tuners and you've got a choice of 1,200 channels, it's like television. There's so many more choices. It's so splintered that if you're into 1950s rockabilly, you're going to find a station just for that. So I think what would be great would be a station that would play everything, kind of weave it together. And I don't know how many people would like that. Well, I think there's people out there that would listen to nothing but Beatles 24/7, and that's okay too.
How do you feel about the state of Milwaukee radio at this point in your life?
I think radio reacts to the marketplace. I mean, I'll tell you a story. Way back in the 60s when I was doing freeform radio, with all the pure intentions of, not being commercial or anything, I ran into some top 40 guys, and there was a guy in town who was running the top 40 station, and I said, I want to meet this guy and talk to him about why radio exists, what's the meaning of radio, that kind of stuff. So I got to meet him, and I walked in his office, and I thought, we're going to have a great, maybe 2-3 hour discussion, philosophical discussion about why radio exists and the good it can do. And I said to him, why do you think radio exists? And he looked at me and said, to make money. And I looked at him and I said, okay, and I walked out, because there wasn't much more to say. And in retrospect, that basically is a truth. It may not be the truth, but it may be the driving truth. It's a business, it's run by ratings, and even when there were two progressive rock stations in town, ZMF and TOS, and we at TOS at that time, Cosner was doing all-night jazz, and we really had a pretty intelligent air staff in terms of what kind of music. They were all music freaks. The other station started playing a lot more Stones and Beatles, and buried us in the ratings. So even back then, people liked familiar music. In terms of radio in Milwaukee, all I can say is that the morning shows have been very competitive with each other, but it's been fun. Like Dave and Carol are really good people, and we've always wanted to beat them, and I'm sure vice versa. But bottom line is they're friends. Bob and Brian, met them a couple of times, nice people.
A lot of success,
and I never get to hear their shows because I'm always working. But there's never been anything really untoward with competition like that. And I admire them for that.
Let's take another quick break. We'll continue with Bob Reitman in just a moment. Back on Sunday night with Bob Reitman. I know you've had a lot of things that you've been proud of during your career, but I've heard you say in the past that one of the proudest moments was your trip to what was then the Soviet Union in the mid-1980s.
Oh yeah, that was Miller and I fortunately ended up over in Moscow doing, I think, 12 days of radio. And I found out later, some of it was through the air and underground cables. I mean, they kind of strung this thing together to get it live here in Milwaukee. But we had the chance to sit down at a long table with group of people from Moscow. Some were housewives, some were, there's a horseback riding instructor, there was a school teacher. Just like you pick 12 people out of Milwaukee, and that was the whole idea, that people in Milwaukee could say to people in Moscow, what's it like when both mom and dad are working? How do you deal with that? Is there something comparable to a fish fry? I remember it stirred things up around this building a little bit because these were communists.
Right.
They were. And you know, we've been taught all our lives, hate the communists and hate what they do. When you actually go there and see what an oppressive system that is, it is. Not that I ever thought it wasn't, but when you see 4 people working in a store, one's picking up the item off the shelf, another one's wrapping it, another one is charging you the money, and the 4th one's handing it to you, and you know that none of them are ever going to get to go any further. That's it. And you could feel it there. So it's a real lesson, and again, I emphasize, it's one thing to know in theory that something's bad. It's really amplified when you actually see it. It was sad because they're wonderful people. The Soviet people were wonderful.
If it hadn't been radio, Bob, what would it have been for you?
Organized crime. You know, we did an interview with Vincent Chiavelli, and I get teased about this to this day. He's an actor. He just passed away. He played the crazy guy in the subway in Ghost, among many other things. I said, let me ask the first question on the interview. He's sitting there smoking a pipe, and I said, Mr. Chiavelli, why acting? Why not organized crime? They'll silence. The air conditioner got louder and louder, and they will tease me until the day I'm gone.
It's an icebreaker, right?
Oh, God, it was just like, oh, how could I ask that? Such a terrible question. I mean, a terrible suggestion. You know something? I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working in a cemetery. I know. I mean, I was...
Truthfully, I know, yeah.
I was managing a cemetery and writing poetry and reading poetry in coffee houses, and I really didn't have any long-range plans. It's all sources. I've been very lucky.
Talk about serendipity.
I know, and I don't know if people are bothered by that word, but I use that word a lot.
Whatever, yeah.
It just, I got lucky. I consider myself extremely lucky. I remember when I was 13 years old, maybe even younger, thinking how much fun summer vacation was from school. I was probably 10, thinking this is great. School ends, 3 months of doing whatever I want, and then back to school. I like the summer part the best. Wouldn't that be great to do something like be on summer vacation all my life? And I remember thinking that, and that's sort of what's happened. I mean, I haven't really worked since 1967.
I had a guy once tell me that. His advice was, do what you love and think back to when you were a kid and what you liked to do as a kid and try and do something like that as an adult. He thought that was the key to success.
Hey, if you can do that, how lucky you are. I mean, there's a lot of people I'm watching right now that probably aren't doing exactly what they want to, and hats off to them for that daily struggle, because it's a responsible, respectful thing to do. But some of us, for whatever reason, I don't know what the next lifetime, I'm going to probably come back as a consultant just to be punished for what I'm doing now. I'm having so much fun
And
now.
then people will listen to you.
Yes, and they'll do the wrong thing, and then I'll leave town with a check, you know, and it's something like that.
We'll take one final break. Back on Sunday Night in a moment. We're back one final time on Sunday Night with radio's Bob Reitman. Not to be maudlin here, but your dad's decision to retire when he did has some impact on your decision, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, we are our father's sons, and we become a lot like our fathers, more than I think we even think we're going to. And he retired at 65 and got prostate cancer at 66. And I always thought it was, you know, he worked hard all his life. He was an FBI agent. He was the head of the Milwaukee Board of Realtors. He was a fine man. And then you put in your years and you think, you should have some time. You never can tell. Yeah. You know, you might get 5 minutes, you might get 30 years. It's just the way things go. But I thought that's part of the reason. I wanted to have as much time as I possibly could to relax and enjoy it. But it's also time. You know, people used to say to me years ago, when are you going to quit? When's it going to be over for you? And I remember in my 20s thinking, if I can get past 30 or 35 doing this, you know, that'd be great. Never 40. 50 impossible,
Right.
and 60 not even in my thinking at all. And here I am 64. And they're not firing me, and I'm really grateful for that. And they said to me, they brought me and they said, when do you want to stop? It's up to you. And I mean this. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. And I said, you know, I think this is it. I think this will be the year. Part of it's because of my dad, but you just kind of feel like, okay, it's, and I'm sure some people are going, hey, you should have done it 20 years ago. But I feel it, and I feel comfortable with it this time.
Your health is good. You had the battle with prostate cancer back in '99, but you're good.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
good.
fine. And people come up to me to this day and say, how are you feeling? And I have to think for a second, did I have a cold? I mean, something that big, time does diminish. But I would take this moment here to say that every guy over the age of 40 should get that exam. And the guys aren't going to do it. So the women watching this show, any guy that you love, your father, your husband, your brother, whoever it is, should get that test at age 40. It's easy. Once a year, you're clear. If they find it, you end up eating it.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky.
It's good to see you again. Best of luck with the remaining months on the job, and I don't know, you're going to have a lot of fun in the time after that. So.
Well, I'm sure we'll be seeing each other.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
feeding the pigeons, drinking lemonade. And
Lots
best
of time
of luck,
on our hands.
Best of luck to you.
Best to your wife and to the kids.
And you
good,
too.
Good to have you here, Bob.
Thanks, Mike.
And as we go, I just want to tie up a couple of loose ends here. This, as I think I stated at the beginning of the show, is our final show with a live guest in the studio. So after 17 years, as some of you know, we're going to be wrapping this up. This is the final show with the live guest, but there will be one more show. Still finalizing the date. It'll be a couple of weeks from now in August. We'll let you know when that's going to be. We'll take a look back at some of the folks who've been in the studio with me, and we'll say a few thank yous on that day too. For tonight, thanks for being with us. I'm Mike Gousha. I'll see you again the next time we meet on Sunday night.